Mr Deputy Speaker. The House has resumed for extended sitting. Call on Government Orders of the Day, numbers 5 and 6.
Maraeroa A and B Blocks Claim Settlement Bill, second reading. Maraeroa A and B Blocks Incorporation Bill, second reading.
The Honourable Tariana Turia.
Mr Speaker, I move that Maraeroa A and B Blocks Claim Settlement Bill and Maraeroa A and B Blocks Incorporation Bill be now read a second time. These bills give effect to the Maraeroa A and B Blocks Deed of Settlement that was signed on the 12th of March 2011 at Pāharakeke. I want firstly to acknowledge the descendants of the original owners of the Maraeroa A and B blocks, comprising individuals from Ngāti Rereahu, Maniapoto, Raukawa, Ngāti Tūparetoa and other iwi and hapu groups. The Maraeroa A and B blocks are located on the volcanic plateau to the east of Te Kuiti. The beneficiaries of the settlement will be the descendants of the original owners of Maraeroa A and B blocks, regardless of their iwi affiliation. It is customary in the stages of treaty legislation for the House and for the wānau hapu and iwi concerned to consider the sacrifice and the commitment of those who have acted as guardians and champions of the settlement process. I want today to mihi to Philip Ngāwhira Crown, who as chair of Maraeroa A and B Blocks Trust has made such a significant contribution to our collective knowledge of Rereahu Maniapoto traditions. Philip has devoted his life to learning the traditions, history, customs, culture, language, waiata and genealogy of Rereahu Maniapoto and Tainui. Indeed, his publication, Rereahu Chronicles, was launched here in Parliament in 2009. Philip has been a valued member of the negotiations team which negotiated the deed of settlement, and I want to acknowledge his extensive traditional and cultural knowledge which has been called on to confirm the integrity of this claim. I want to also acknowledge Glenn Katu, trustee, who has been such a powerhouse of energy in advancing the settlement legislation which we will be debating today. It should be noted that this settlement is outside of the settlement framework and does not comprehensively settle all the claims of the claimant groups. However, all claims that relate to the Maraeroa A and B blocks will be extinguished by settlement. As with all treaty legislation, the history which led to this legislation is not a story that we can be proud of as members of Parliament or indeed as New Zealanders. The claims of the descendants of the original owners of Maraeroa A and B blocks relate primarily to the operation of native land laws of the 19th century, which led to the alienation of most of Maraeroa A and B. The Crown acknowledges that in 1862 native land legislation was imposed on the owners without consulting them. To add insult to injury, from 1884 to 1908, the Crown had a monopoly over purchasing land from the owners, and by 1908 the Crown had purchased 90% of Maraeroa A and B blocks. The blocks contain very significant indigenous forests. The prices paid by the Crown did not appear to include the value of the indigenous timber that was on the land. Felling of the indigenous forest in fact destroyed the habitat of the indigenous flora and fauna. The alienation of Maraeroa A and B separated the descendants of the original owners from their wāhi tapu and severed their cultural connection to the land. I cannot understand just how significant this dislocation has been. We have many sayings which represent the absolute connection that tangata whenua, literally the people of the land, have in our connection with the whenua. Connection so strong that they have spanned multiple generations and endure as one of the foundation principles that wānau hapu and iwi exercise in the undertaking of their rights and responsibilities as guardians, as tangata tiaki. Manaaki whenua, manaaki tangata, haere waka mua, care for the land, care for the people, go forward. In the case of this legislation, the loss of these lands undermined the social and traditional tribal structures of the people of Maraeroa A and B, their ability to exercise customary rights, and deprive them of the ability to access ngā wāhi kohinga kai, cultural resources and materials. This settlement bill therefore gives effect to the undertakings made by the Crown in the deed of settlement, and the redress includes an agreed historical account, Crown acknowledgements and apology, the vesting of sites of cultural and historical significance, a high-level partnership agreement with the Department of Conservation over public conservation lands within the Maraeroa A and B blocks, a financial settlement of $1.8 million, and redress over Crown properties, including licensed forest land. Mr Speaker, in the framework we have available to us through the cognate bill process, today we will also consider the Maraeroa A and B blocks incorporation bill. The incorporation bill will establish a Māori incorporation to form part of the post-settlement governance that will receive and manage the settlement redress on behalf of the claimant community. It was not possible to establish a Māori incorporation through the Maraeroa A and B blocks claims settlement bill. Part of the first post-settlement governance arrangements is a Māori incorporation which needed to be established through a private bill in order to comply with standing orders. We are considering the two bills together to progress the incorporation bill at the same time as the Maraeroa A and B claims settlement bill, so that the transfer of settlement assets can take place. These bills were referred to the Māori Affairs Select Committee on the 8th of March 2012. The committee reported back to the House on the 14th of June 2012, and the committee unanimously supports both bills and has proposed no major amendments. The committee has recommended two technical amendments. One is to clarify the definition of the claimant group by reciting specific land court minutes. The other amendment is to remove an unnecessary clause. I wish to thank my parliamentary colleagues on the Māori Affairs Committee for considering these bills in a timely fashion, allowing progress to be achieved. And finally, I'd like to thank Te Maru o Rereahu trustees who negotiated the settlement on behalf of the descendants of the original owners of Maraeroa A and B. I trust the agreement reached with the descendants of the original owners embodied in these bills will enhance the relationship between the Crown and those descendants into the future. Indeed, this was a promise that was made when the Crown and tangata whenua entered into their partnership at Waitangi. Legislation such as this helps us to pave the way for a new approach to the treaty relationship as a relationship of equals. Tēnā tātou katoa. Mr Speaker, the question is that the motion be agreed to.
Oh, but yeah, that's right.
Oh.
That's normally the clerk says that, but that's all right. We'll take that as said. So Honourable Parakura, are you seeking the call now?
Mr Speaker, yes I am.
Honourable Parakura Horovia. Oh, firstly, let me say before I call the member, the question is that the motion be agreed to, and now I'll take the Honourable Parakura Horovia.
Mr Speaker.
Yeah, well done.
Tēnā tata. Mihi koina ki ngā kōrero.